Function of the smooth ER. Smooth ER makes lipids. Right? What does the rough ER do?
Makes protein.
What makes the rough ER rough and the smooth ER not rough? Presence of ribosome. Portion of the cell involved in enzymatic breakdown. Lysosome, if it said oxidative breakdown. Peroxisome. And the sugar that makes up the plant cell wall. And why is cellulose significant to our body? We can't break it down. What is the version of sugar or polysaccharide that we can break down that you get from a plant? So from a plant, it's starch, and when you store it in your body, it's called glycogen. Master regulator of the endocrine system, hypothalamus. How does it work? Controls the pituitary. Two hormones made by the adrenal medulla. So the adrenal medulla is where epinephrine and norepinephrine get made. How about the adrenal cortex? Cortisol and aldosterone. From where is glucagon produced?
Pancreas.
So glucagon is made by the alpha cells of the islets in the pancreas. What do the beta cells make? What does the third cell type make? So somatostatin. Two hormones produced by the posterior pituitary. ADH and oxytocin. What do they? How are these? Or when does the posterior pituitary release those two hormones?
Water
And childbirth.
Both. So you have nerve connection from the hypothalamus activated by either water balance, water regulation, or contractions of the uterus. Gland involved in regulating circadian rhythms. Pineal gland. Where would you find the pineal gland? What is the stimulus that activates the pineal gland? Darkness. Cardio, largest portion of the heart. Left ventricle. Why? Has to generate pressure for the entire circulation. Primary pacemaker of the heart. SA node. What is the other job of the SA node? It activates atrial contractions. The valve that separates the left side. So on the left side is the bicuspid, also called the mitral valve. Prevents the inversion of muscles, inversion of valves. Chordae tendonae, and then their appropriate capillary muscles. Internal lining of the four chambers. Endocardium. What are the other three layers? Myocardium in the middle, that's mainly cardiac muscle. Then the endocardium outside, the epicardium outside, which lines the outer portion of the chamber. And then the pericardium, which is the membrane that surrounds the overall thing. Site of gas exchange in the circulatory system. Capillaries. Why capillaries? Simple squamous cell. Outgoing vessel from the left ventricle. The aorta. What about from the right ventricle? The pulmonary artery. So there is no aorta equivalent. Which layer of blood vessels do you find smooth muscle and elastin? And media. How are these different in arteries and veins? They're going to be thicker in arteries. From which blood layer would you find valves? They're made by the tunica intima. What is the other major role of the tunica intima? To remain smooth so that you don't get clogged. Portion of the circulatory system with the most blood at any given time. Systemic veins, right? Roughly 60 to 65% at any given time is in your vein. Portion of blood responsible for oxygen transport. Again, we could either say hemoglobin or red blood cells, one of the two. Most abundant molecule in blood, water, right? So the most abundant molecule in the entire body, 70%, everything is water. The function of platelets in blood activates clotting. Cells that produce granules with defensins. Neutrophils. What are defensins for? Defense against bacteria. Primary osmotic regulator of blood. Albumin. What are some of the other plasma proteins? The globulins, which do what? So they're lipid transport and antibodies, and then lastly, clotting factors like thrombin and fibrinogen. Site of gas exchange in the lungs and the alveoli. What's special about alveoli? Simple squamous cells. First division of the respiratory tract. Bronchi. So trachea divides into bronchi. Maintains an open air passageway. Cartilage. Why is that important? Because gas will conform to its container. It can't force its way open. Prevents food from entering the airway during swallowing. The epiglottis, which is found in what portion of the respiratory system? Technically found in the larynx. Membrane that surrounds the lungs. The pleural membrane. 4 kinds of tissues. What's the role of epithelial tissue in the body? Role of connective tissue in the body? Muscle tissue.
Contract.
And nerve tissue.
Action potential.
3 kinds of epithelial cells. Common defining characteristic of connective tissue. 2 most common proteins that make up ECM. Collagen and elastin. Membrane that surrounds the heart. Pericardium. What would be the membrane that surrounds bone? Periosteum. So that peri term means around. Cell type that generates collagen and elastin in connective tissue. Fibroblast. A specialized form of a fibroblast found in bone. Osteoblast, which secretes collagen and calcium. 2 hormones involved in the food feedback loop. Insulin and glucagon. Which one is for high blood sugar? And low blood sugar, therefore, is glucagon. 2 glands involved in regulating blood calcium levels. Thyroid and parathyroid. What are the hormones that they release? Thyroid makes calcitonin. Parathyroid makes parathyroid hormone, or PTH. Location of peptide hormone receptors have to be on the surface. Why? Peptides cannot go through membranes, right? But steroids can, and so that where would steroid receptor hormone? Anywhere in the cell. Stimulates the release of growth hormone. So it is a anterior pituitary hormone, and therefore you have a hormone-releasing hormone for growth hormone. Cellular functions of most hormones. Somehow change metabolism, typically by modifying gene expression. ECG wave that corresponds to ventricular contraction. What are the other typical waves, and what do they correspond to? Depolarization of the SA node involves movement of this ion. So the SA node, and only in the SA node, depolarization involves influx of calcium. Delays the contraction of ventricles from the atrium as a function of the AV node, along with this travels it down to the edge. Extends the refractory period of an MAP in cardiac muscle. Calcium plateau. Why is that important? Redensation, which therefore prevents fatigue. Causes cardiac muscle to be instantly electrically connected. Circulated discs. Why is that important? Because each chamber contracts as one functional unit. The driving force of unidirectional blood flow. Pressure, and what is the consequence of that? Pressure constantly decreases throughout the blood system. Pressure of contraction is called systole. So what is the term for pressure relaxation? Diastole. The blood flow with the fastest actual blood velocity. Capillaries. But what about their average blood velocity? The slowest. Prevents the backflow of blood and the venous flow. Valves. Pressure measured by the laminar flow of blood. So laminar means smooth flow, which means the blood is flowing without any problems. That is the diastolic number. The term for the flow that you see when you have some contraction force is turbulent flow, and that's where you define your systolic. 3 major muscles involved in breathing. Diaphragm and the 2 IC muscles. Normal process of inhalation and exhalation results in a tidal volume. What are the other 3 volumes that you make up the total lung capacity? Inspiratory reserve, expiratory reserve, and the volume that's always there, which is the residual volume. Amount of fresh air that reaches the alveoli. Only 70%. Why only 70%? Because you have some open air passageway. Internal IC muscle is involved in eliminating the expiratory reserve. So that's an active process. And then the law that says pressure and volume are inversely related is Boyle's law. Carrier protein that transports oxygen. What is the carrier that transports carbon dioxide? Bicarbonate. Partial pressure of oxygen in the aorta. It has to be 100 because the aorta is transporting oxygenated blood. Primary mechanism for carbon dioxide transport, bicarbonate. What are the other 2 mechanisms that are used for carbon dioxide? Partly is gas, partly bound to hemoglobin. Partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the right atrium. So right atrium transports deoxygenated blood, so it would have to be 45. Percentage of oxygen in the air, about 21%. What is the rest of air? Mostly nitrogen. And you have some carbon dioxide, a few other things. Hormone that stimulates the adrenal cortex. ACTH. Hormone involved in positive feedback release. Oxytocin. Hormone secreted in response to darkness. Melatonin, which comes from which gland? Pineal gland. Hormone that stimulates hematopoiesis. EPO, where does that come from? Kidneys. The 6 hormones of the anterior pituitary, so flag top. What is the significance of a 4-chambered heart? Efficiency separates the pulmonary and systemic flows. Valve that prevents backflow into the right ventricle. So it would be between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery, which is the pulmonic valve. Pulmonary valve. The most abundant organelle in cardiac muscle? Mitochondria. Portion of the heartbeat represented by the T sub P wave. Atrial relaxation. In a normal ECG, you would not see that wave. Role of sodium during the action potential of an SA node. So in the SA node, sodium is involved in pacemaker. In a normal action potential, sodium is involved in depolarization. The first artery coming off of the aorta will be the coronary artery, which feeds. What are the next major arteries coming off of the aorta? So first you're going to have the brachiocephalic, then the left carotid, then the left subclavian. What does the brachiocephalic feed? The right side of the arm, the right side of the head. What does the left carotid feed? Left side of the head, the left subclavian feeds left arm, and on down the line. Blood pressure reading is taken of this vessel, the brachial artery. Major vein returning from the head, jugular. I think it's the only major instance where the artery and vein have different names. So your carotid artery feeds the head, but your jugular vein returns blood from the head. 2 major veins have become the iliac vein. The iliac vein is the one in your groin that's returning from your legs. So the 2 major ones are the femoral vein and then the great saphenous vein. 3 major veins that return to form the axillary. Brachial, the basilic, and then the cephalic. The process of generating blood cells is called hematopoiesis. Where does hematopoiesis occur in the body? Red bone marrow. Major cell that generates platelets. Megakaryocytes. Waste product generated by the breakdown of excess heme, bilirubins. Granules of histamine are found in basophils, and what do those do? Vasodilation, or they're also a chemoattractant for other white blood cells. pH of typical blood, very tightly regulated at 7.35 to 7.45. Why is that significant? Because carbon dioxide makes blood more acidic and therefore regulates respiration. Part of the respiratory system that traps dust particles, mucus. Gas law that says that pressure is the sum of its individual parts. Dalton's law. One of the 3 bones that surrounds the nasal cavity. So enthmoid and sphenoid above, and then the palate down below. Cells that produce surfactant in the lungs. Septal cells. Sometimes also called alveolar type 2 cells. But a piece of cartilage that form the nose. Septal and LR. Hormone that regulates the body metabolism. T3 and T4. Where does that come from? Thyroid. Vocal cords wrap around this structure. The glottis in your larynx. How frequently does blood circulate throughout the body? Roughly once per minute at rest, right? So when you are exercising, that number can decrease significantly. Piece of cartilage in the larynx that generates the Adam's apple. So the largest piece of cartilage you have is the thyroid. And finally, describes the mechanism of oxygen binding to hemoglobin. Provides in a cooperative fashion.
Are you going to be up?
Nope.
Yay.
So any questions we'd like to go over in more detail?